Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday night. Cheers. Great to see familiar faces I haven't seen in a while and noticing some new folks. So I hope everyone can hear me. Looks like we've got quite a few people already joining. I know we'll have a few more joining, but I want to go ahead and get started tonight. So welcome. We're going to be talking about some California wines tonight. So the name of tonight's virtual tasting is California Dreamin. And hopefully you have already poured a glass of the Pinot Grigio. If you haven't done that, you have my permission to go ahead and unscrew that cap. So get into it and pour yourself a glass. Do not wait on me to start drinking. We're going to cover a few things over the first few minutes. Yeah, if you haven't opened the Pinot Grigio, go for it. In fact, you could open the rosé if you want. And definitely go ahead and open the Zinfandel if you haven't done that. Want to let that thing breathe a little bit. It's a young wine, so it can actually benefit from having some exposure to oxygen before we drink it a little later. So this particular tasting tonight, California Dreamin', was really born out of a lot of questions about how to find wine values in California. It's not hard to spend a ton of money in wines from Napa, Sonoma, but I am asked over and over again how to find spots for high quality wine at everyday prices. So that's what I'm going to try and do tonight. This is by no means an exhaustive deep dive, but we're definitely going to learn about some wines that I think deliver both quality and value. And in fact, all three of these wines that we're going to have tonight made the Wine Enthusiast 2020 Top 100 Best Buy list, and all three of these actually made it in the top 15. So, we talk about this often. It's totally subjective. You may not like these wines. You may, like them. You may fall in love with one of them. But according to those men and women who rate and analyze wine for a living, these three wines were determined to be really great values in 2020. And I don't know if many of you have enjoyed wines from Bogle before, but I'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to the Zinfandel. But one of my favorite brands in California, Toad Hollow, another one of my longtime favorite California wine brands. In fact, I think last spring, we actually, in one of my tastings, we had one of the Toad Hollow unoaked Chardonnays. Dark Horse is kind of a newcomer over the last few years, but again, delivers really a lot of value. And, so we'll see what happens. Like all of my virtual wine events, we are going to support an organization in Birmingham that's doing some outstanding work in the community. Tonight, I'm happy to report that our virtual tip jar is going to support Smile a Mile. And Smile a Mile was the beneficiary of a couple of virtual tip jars in 2020. So, I've supported Smile a Mile in many ways over the years. Love what they do. Love the people there. Love the energy of their team of on-staff folks and volunteers. So I just want to give Molly Stone a second to come on and say a little bit about Smile a Mile for those of you who don't know Smile a Mile. So Molly, if you are out there, I can't see you based on my view, but if you would unmute yourself and maybe just say a little bit about Smile a Mile. Hello, Molly. Earth to Molly. Okay, well, let's see. Do I see Molly on the, I don't have my glasses on, so this could be a little bit of a train wreck. but maybe we'll. I can't see her on the participant list now, but we'll just suffice it to say that Smile a Mile, they focus on helping children and their families that are experiencing kind of that pediatric cancer journey. So they have camps, pre-COVID, they had amazing summer camps. They have all sorts of activities for these young people that make them feel, validated and loved. And I mean, again, I wish that Molly was here to actually talk a little bit about it, but I would encourage you, if you're looking for an organization that's doing some really awesome work with some folks that always need a little extra love. It's some of these kids that are going through some pretty tough times. And so anyway, the virtual tip jar tonight, Smile a Mile. You can make those virtual tips through Venmo to my Venmo address at Jones is Thirsty. And like always, 100% of that will be passed along on Monday morning to Smile a Mile. So let's get kind of jump into things. Oh, one more thing. I always have to say this. Please ask questions tonight. We're going to cover, the format's going to be a little bit different than we've done in the past. So there'll be probably my goal and my hope is that this will elicit some comments or some questions. So please ask those questions. You can do it through the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask away. We're all friends here. It's a Saturday night. We're all sitting back with some wine. So if you feel led, please unmute yourself and ask away. But either method is fine. So I'm going to start by showing kind of a high-level map of California. Since we're going to be in California tonight, for those of you who don't know, you probably know Napa and Sonoma, but I felt like it was important just to give a broad overview of the main wine growing regions of California. And up in the North Coast, you see the regions that you probably know: Napa, Sonoma. You have Lake County, and then right above that you have Mendocino, and that's Mendocino, which is not kind of covered in this broad map. Mendocino is one of the coldest regions in California, and you're seeing a lot of really very high quality sparkling wine coming out of Mendocino. So if you're looking for a new California wine region to explore, that's definitely one of them. A little further down, you have the Central Coast. We've done we've covered many wines in my virtual wine events that come from Monterey, San Luis Obispo, all the way down to Santa Barbara. That's a part of California that I absolutely love. And then what's one area that we haven't touched on, or actually two areas that we've never touched on in any of my virtual events, is the Central Valley and the Sierra Foothills. And we're going to do that tonight. And that's why I also wanted to show you these maps. So in the Central Valley, a lot of people think of that as, and it's true, that's kind of where, that's considered like America's salad bowl. That's where all of, a lot of the produce that we eat in America are grown in that Central Valley. They can literally rotate and harvest a crop 2 to 3 times because the weather is just perfect for growing just about anything. And grapes happen to be one of those products. So we'll look at, we have you have the San Joaquin Valley. I remember hearing about the San Joaquin Valley when I was a kid, because that's where all those grapes, when they had the Welch's grapes or the grapes or raisins, that's what it was, the dancing raisins. When they had those stop motion raisin commercials, the raisins were always from the San Joaquin Valley. But above that, you have Sacramento. Below that, you have Fresno. I always thought of those as kind of, dusty California cities, but they are really actually grow some amazing grapes. And then in the Sierra Foothills, which it produces some amazing wines. And in fact, the Zinfandel and most of the really renowned Zinfandel in America comes from Amador County. And we're going to talk about that when we look at the Zinfandel tonight. But if you ever have a chance to actually go to that wine region, the Sierra Foothills, that entire viticultural area is absolutely gorgeous. So any questions about the map before we move on? I don't want to blow right by this if you have any questions. Yes, no, maybe.
Scott, hey,
yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is Molly Stone from Smile a Mile. I had major technical difficulties.
Okay, Molly.
And so I just was letting you know I'm here and wanted to just thank your viewers on behalf of Smile a Mile for their sponsorship.
Well, you bet, Molly. I had said a few words about Smile a Mile and how Jones is Thirsty has supported the organization over the years. I think y'all are doing some amazing stuff. And is there anything? I know you just had the Red Nose Ball, which was a big virtual, very fun. You guys did a great job with it this year. But what are some of the initiatives that the Smile a Mile is doing this year, kind of an anticipation that we'll probably get beyond COVID, but anything that's worth mentioning now?
Yeah, absolutely. We are currently planning our Funky Monkey event in June. Our run is scheduled. We're actually going to have an in-person run as our plan. Funky Monkey will probably be some type of hybrid of a virtual event, but also an in-person component. Similar to Red Nose Ball, probably not as intimate, maybe a little bit larger groups, hopefully. And then really the focus for our team after going through Red Nose Ball is looking at our programming. So how can we provide programming to the 1,500 plus families across the state that we serve? And so we're looking at hybrid in-person day camps. We're working with our medical team. We're in the hospital pretty much every day, weekly for sure, doing the CCTV broadcast, but then definitely every day on the unit on quarterback 8 with our oncology and hemoc medical team. And so just, trying to think outside the box because, unfortunately cancer diagnosis was not canceled in 2020. And so we now more than ever, our families really need the support, emotional and spiritual, that Smile a Mile provides. But the good news is hope is never canceled. So just again, thank you. And I am so sorry to jump in the middle of the start of your talk. I just was having a minor freak out. And of course, Zoom, everybody's got to go with the flow. But I won't take any more of your time. Just thank you so much.
Yeah, Molly, listen, thank you. And please do not for one second feel the least bit embarrassed. If we didn't have technical difficulties in our lives, I don't know how we'd get through the day without that unique stress that comes from flipping out because something that works every time you use it, except when you need it that one time. So
absolutely,
please, I hope you have a glass of wine and can now, take a big old gulp or a glass or two and just chill out and
absolutely.
Fun. Okay, well, good.
Awesome.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, so we're let's go ahead and jump into the first wine. And I have to say, in full disclosure, I'm not a Pinot Grigio fan. Okay, that's just the truth. But I had to take my own advice, which is you need to, I know about Pinot Grigio, it's just never been my favorite grape. But when I read about Dark Horse and saw that it had made that top 15, top 10 list of best buys, I kind of decided that I would take my own advice and try it and just see what I thought. And so we've talked about Pinot Gris before and looked at a few examples of Pinot Gris that I think are terrific. And so for many of you, if you've had Pinot Gris, you know a little bit about that. Pinot Grigio, I'm sure that many of you have had that, but just as a little point of reference, Pinot Grigio just means gray Pinot. And you can see from that image, those are actually Pinot Grigio grapes. So they have this light pink skin. And in fact, there's a wine called Ramato that's made in Italy where they make a rosé from these skins, and they make it just like a regular rosé. They crush the grapes and then they leave those light pink skins in contact with the juice for about 24 hours, and it turns into this kind of pinkish orange wine. And you're actually going to start seeing probably a little bit more of that because folks are starting to get a little bit hip to using Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio with a little bit of tint to it. But I know the first time that I saw that grape, I was really blown away because I think of a grape like Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay, which has this really can have like a light green to a dark green skin. Pinot Grigio is anything but that. It has some definitely has some tint to it. And in fact, that Ramato that I was talking about that's made in Italy, I know that there are a couple of small producers in Oregon that are actually doing something like that. Anytime you see the word Pinot in front of a grape, whether it's a white wine or a red wine, you can almost be assured that it is a mutation of Pinot Noir. And we'll talk a little bit about that with the next wine. But Pinot Noir as a grape is really unstable genetically. And so you have all of these mutations that come off of it. So again, we'll look at that with the Pinot Noir. But Pinot Gris kind of has its historic home in France, and then it made its way to Italy, particularly up in the Northeast near the Veneto region, which is where you have most of the kind of Pinot Grigio that you've probably had from Italy. That's probably where it comes from. Pinot Gris as a grape is kind of associated with cooler climates like Alsace, France, or Oregon. And then Pinot Grigio is typically associated with cool climates like Northeast Italy, the Veneto, also Germany, and some of the warmer climates actually in California and Australia. And so tonight, obviously, we have this version from Australia. But here's what you need to know. Both grapes are technically synonymous. We talked about that long ago when we looked at Pinot Gris. But what I want you to know is Pinot Gris, when you see that, that is code for kind of fruity in a French style with maybe a little hint of residual sugar. Not a sweet wine, but a little hint of sugar. So big on fruit, more in the French style. When you see Pinot Grigio, that's code for a drier, more a wine with a little more minerality, and that's definitely the Italian style. Okay. Now, what we have with this California version is a little bit of a riff on the Italian version. It's still very dry in that Italian tradition, but it definitely has more alcohol, and that's because where it's grown in that Central Valley near. We talked about Fresno, Sacramento, the San Joaquin Valley. That's where most of the Pinot Grigio in America, let alone California, it's actually grown in that area there. Tons of sunshine. When you get sunshine and slightly warmer temperatures, you get a lot more sugar. So when they ferment the grapes, that grape juice to the point where it's dry, you get slightly higher alcohol. So if you were to get a Pinot Grigio from Italy, you'd be at about 11% alcohol. Same thing with one if you got it from a cool climate like Alsace in France or Oregon, it'd be about 11%. If you look at the bottle, this dark horse, it's about 13% alcohol. Still dry, but we'll look at it when we taste it. But I definitely got a little more body. I could feel the weight of the alcohol on my palate. So let's go ahead and let's look at the bottle. We see dark horse. It's a new world wine. So you see the grape name right there, pretty easy to buy at the market. You see Pinot Grigio. Below that, you see California. And I am going to talk a little bit about what California means. That's kind of the little diversion in the education part tonight, is I want to talk a little bit about what that word California means, because we see it on 2 of the 3 wines tonight. You see the vintage date, 2019. I think we all know what that means. So what's it look like in the glass? You can look at this if you've got a white piece of paper. It helps you look at the wine. But in this case, to me, it just looks almost like water. I mean, it's very, very light in color, like very light straw. So as we've discussed in the past class, anyone want to tell me what one thing that you might know about this wine without even tasting it, just by looking at the color of the wine? Somebody want to raise their hand and tell me, or enter into the chat room, what just looking at this wine might tell you about this wine? Anyone? Bueller.
Okay, no, that it has no oak aging.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes.
There is one of the longtime Jones is Thirsty winos. Thank you, Grace. Well done. That's exactly right. You can look at this this Pinot Grigio, and just by looking at the color, you know that it does not have any oak influence, because even if it was neutral oak, meaning that it was oak that really had been used so many times that it wasn't giving off a lot of flavor or a lot of that deep color, even neutral oak would add some color to this wine. But you can look at the wine and see that it is fermented and aged in all stainless steel. So you will know that when we smell it and when you taste it, you're not going to be looking for those flavors that you might get from an oak barrel. So let's take a couple of sniffs. And again, not a typical nose of a Pinot Grigio. It's kind of like halfway between, for me, a Pinot Grigio and a Pinot Gris. I definitely get apples and some citrus, maybe some lemon, but it also has a little bit of a blossom characteristic to me that I wouldn't get from a really, really cold climate Italian Pinot Grigio, but I'm not getting that more ripe fruit from a fruitier version of like a one from Oregon. But the nose, definitely to me, very inviting. Let's take a big gulp, swish it around in your mouth a little bit. Yeah. So to me, I'm getting definitely some stone fruit. I don't know if it's peachy, but it's something more than apple. There's definitely a richer fruit there. And I don't know if anyone was picking up that mouthfeel, but there's a certain weight, a viscosity on my tongue that it's light and crisp. My mouth is watering, but it just feels a little weightier. And that comes from that little extra hit of alcohol. I don't get a burn of alcohol in my back of my throat or in my nose, but I know it's there. I can feel it on my palate because I looked at the label, and but I know that that's what's giving it that extra weight versus maybe a lot of extra ripeness. And again, that comes from just that sunshine, the warmth that allows these grapes to really fully ripen in a way that just creates a little bit richer wine. So I'm just dying to know. I'm assuming there are probably some Pinot Grigio fans out there. There could be some folks like me that are don't typically buy Pinot Grigio. I mean, I drink it if it's offered, but would love to get some feedback on this one. I honestly was really impressed by this wine. I would, again, I like the richness of Pinot Gris, but I could absolutely, in my mind, make the connection between tons of foods that this would go with, especially as the the weather kind of warms up. We get closer into spring, into summer. It's got that minerality that I love. Not too much fruit, but just enough to make it drinkable the entire afternoon. So, anybody want to offer up some comments about this one?
We really like it. We've been trying it with several different things, and one is crawfish.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Crawfish, and we were also thinking it would be really good at the lake this summer.
Oh, absolutely. Suzanne, you're exactly right. In fact, the whole crawfish, the shellfish kind of thing, one of the things that I was thinking today, because I'm like praying that Chez Fonfon, which is one of my favorite restaurants to have lunch here in Birmingham, I just can't wait till they open up, because they have that the mussels and fries, that they do that's so fantastic. And to me, this is kind of that. It's got that thing going on where it's got enough body but enough acidity, and that minerality undertone that would be great with a big bowl of steamed of mussels, with some fries and a little mayo and all that garlic and butter. But the crawfish, you're right there. I mean, you've got Suzanne, are they boils, so they've got some spice with them, or how'd you guys fix them up?
Yeah, we got them from our local seafood market. So they there, and yeah, they've got a little bit of spice to them.
Right on.
The quote from there was, "Can't nobody cook them like we do." So.
Well,
Cleaver.
they gotta be good,
No, Hoover Seafood.
That's right, Hoover Seafood. That's right.
Yeah, good, excellent. Well, that's a great move there. I would even have these with raw oysters. With this would also be great. Whether it was a little mignonette that you had, or I just, especially if you had some of the oysters from the Pacific Northwest that were a little smaller, maybe had a little more salinity and a little more of that minerality to them. I think this is a wine that would be perfect for those. Shrimp salad. I mean, you can just go on and on. I mean, this is, I love your comment about it being a good lake wine. It's a good lake wine, a good beach wine, a good sitting on the porch kind of thing. I'm still have to do a little more digging on California Pinot Grigio, but I think I paid $9 or $10 for this wine. I mean, look, that's dynamite to me. I was pleasantly surprised. Anyone else?
I'm usually hesitant to try new white wine because I'm more of a red wine person, but I really like this.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And are you having it with anything in particular in terms of food?
No, not today.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, I appreciate the Marie. I'll definitely be considering this one as it gets into the spring. But yeah, I'm like you. I'm glad I tried it. Had I not decided to do this wine tasting, I could have actually stayed on the sidelines probably the rest of my life without knowing this wine. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Fresh goat cheese. Yeah.
Does it remind you of maybe some of the Pinot Gris from like Alsace or something like that?
Yeah, it does. And that's what I was saying before. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. It's got the richness in the body of say a French style Pinot Gris from Alsace, or even Austria for that matter. I mean, they're kind of the same growing region, but without that real residual sugar. Like, I think this wine has the impression of sweetness from the fruit, but not that on the aftertaste, in the finish, you get that little bit of sweetness. But yeah, it's definitely reminiscent of that, and with a little bit of the Italian. So it's a fun wine for sure. Yeah. So any questions about Pinot Noir or Pinot Grigio, or Pinot Gris or this region. Otherwise, we'll boogie on over to the Pinot Noir.
I do have a question actually, and this
Yes.
may have already been answered, but maybe for clarification then.
Yeah.
So I also don't really enjoy Pinot Grigios. Well, I thought I didn't. I'm actually pleasantly surprised by this one.
Okay.
So how typical is this of Pinot Grigios, or is this kind of like in a class of its own in terms of like where it sits with the others?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that this is definitely a California style Pinot Grigio. Okay, so if you were to grab a bottle of Pinot Grigio from Friuli or Alto Adige from Italy, it would be even lighter than this wine. You would have that crispness. You would have the more citrus leaning flavors. You would have the minerality, but you wouldn't have the body. And that's really the only way I can describe it, is the viscosity of this wine is totally different from a Pinot Grigio that you would get from Italy. So you have those characteristics of an Italian Pinot Grigio, but when you grow it in the Central Valley in California, where you have not just more sunshine, but you have even more heat at night. And I don't want to mischaracterize that region. It's not blazing hot. It's just warmer than a region that's much further north in terms of latitude. So you need the sunshine to keep the photosynthesis going. That helps the grapes ripen. And then at night, you have slightly warmer temperatures, so the grapes continue to ripen. In the north of Italy, they really struggle to get those grapes ripe. So the alcohol is going to be much lower, around that 10 to 11% alcohol. This one is 13% alcohol. But to your point, in terms of differences, even if you grabbed a Pinot Gris from Alsace and you had a richer style, the alcohol level is still going to be pretty low because they have to work really hard to ripen the grapes and get the right amount of sugar there. So what you're getting here is really a unique kind of style of Pinot Grigio. My guess, even though I've never had a Pinot Grigio from Australia, that's another emerging region for Pinot Grigio. I'd bet my bottom dollar that it's going to be very similar to this, because it's going to be grown in a region like the Barossa Valley, which is where they grow a lot of famous red grapes. They grow a lot of Shiraz there, which is Syrah. They grow a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, but they also grow a lot of Pinot Grigio. So there, I think you would find something very similar to this, a kind of a hybrid style, but a little bit higher alcohol. Again, you're not feeling it, or at least I don't. I mean, I'd love if someone else really gets that alcohol kind of burn, I'd love to know. But for me, I feel it on my palate. And alcohol, in addition to giving you the relaxing buzz, it adds weight and viscosity to a wine. And I definitely feel that here. So that's kind of a long-winded way of giving you my explanation of kind of a California style Pinot Grigio. You know, one that came from a really warm region, like much further down south in California, may actually be sweet. It may actually be a little bit higher in alcohol, but the ones from the Central Valley, which is that area of like Fresno, San Joaquin Valley, Sacramento, which is kind of the you know, ground zero for Pinot Grigio production in California. This is indicative of that style. So if you like this style, be looking for a wine, you know, from that region. Or which is a great segue into the next one, which is talking about the label. If you see the word California on there, chances are it's coming from that San Joaquin kind of Central Valley. Does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. And I'm curious too, because you mentioned that this was, the color was specific to how it was fermented, correct? Mm-hmm. And that being, so I'm imagining that would impact the taste. So are all Pinot Grigios fermented in the steel kind of case, or?
Yeah,
No?
that's a great question. Great question. I'd say the vast majority of the Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris that's made around the world is made fermented in stainless steel and aged in stainless steel and then put in the bottle. Now, this is where kind of those nuances come in. There are some regions like in Germany and in Hungary, for example, that age the Pinot Grigio in neutral oak, which would just give it a little more richness and maybe a little bit of color, but it just adds some of those characteristics that come from having a wine age in oak, even if it's very neutral oak. And also, there are a few regions around the world, some spots in Italy that actually put the wine through malolactic fermentation. And malolactic fermentation is most often recognized in white wine by that buttery characteristic of that you get from Chardonnay. It smooths out the wine. It converts the sharper acid to a more mellow acid, and they do it in almost all red wines. But you don't really pick it up in red wines because it has, red wines have oak aging. So there are other flavors that go above and beyond the smoother buttery flavor of malolactic fermentation. But you definitely get it in Chardonnay. Sometimes you get malolactic fermentation in Pinot Grigio, but the vast majority of the ones that you'll buy at your local wine shop or grocery store are going to be stainless steel fermented, stainless steel aged, put in the bottle, ready to drink, and they're going to look a whole lot like this. And that's just, from, again, that's the juice. It has no contact with those kind of light pink skins. It's just the juice straight into stainless steel container made into wine. Does that help?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, appreciate you asking. Yeah, that's great. So as I was talking about the label, and Sylvia brought up a great question about where this wine comes from. Something I've never spoken about on any of my wine events, which is, there are a lot of, we've touched on it. There are the laws around making wine. You could have a volume of these laws. It's about a foot thick, but for the purposes of tonight's discussion, I think it's really relevant that we talk about what makes, the laws that affect how these wines are made. So this Pinot Grigio, for example, you saw the grape name on the label. So in the US, 75% of the wine that's in that bottle has to be made from Pinot Grigio. So in order to put the word Pinot Grigio on the label, that means that 25% of the juice can be from any grape that you want it to be, but at least 75% has to be Pinot Grigio. Okay, everybody tracking with that? If it's less than 75%, well then you can still put the label, the grapes on there, but you have to show the grapes that make up that blend. So that's why, and you might see a wine label that says Grenache and Syrah, or Cabernet and Merlot, or Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. That means that there's not at least 75% of one of those grapes, but it could be 52-48. And so they can put the grape name on the label if they list those two grapes and their percentages. So all three of the wines we have tonight have their grape name on the label, which means that, and for, in all honesty, all of these wines are 100% of that particular grape. It's just that the law is that it has to be at least 75%. Okay. Now, we saw that the Pinot Grigio and the Zinfandel both have California, the word California on the label. So as it relates to states, if the wine is from California or Oregon, 100% of those grapes, that juice has to be from the state. Okay, so you can't put California on the wine if 95% of the grapes are from California and 5% of the grapes are from New Mexico. You couldn't do that. So California and Oregon, they have to have 100% of the grapes from there. The state of Washington, 95% of the grapes have to come from the state of Washington. The other 5% could come from California, Oregon. I mean, they're all contiguous states, so they are happy to use each other's grapes in certain occasions. The rest of the wine producing states in America just has to be 75. So if you get a wine from New York, 75% of the grapes have to be from the state of New York. The other 25 could be from California, from Oregon, can be from wherever. And actually, you see this a lot in wines from, say, North Carolina, Georgia. Mostly, I mean, if you get a wine from Virginia, chances are it's going to be 100% Virginia, or same with Texas. But states like Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, you might see the state name there, but they're getting just the minimum, and they're probably filling in with bulk grape juice from California or Washington, probably. So that's as it relates to the state. And now here's where it gets a little bit trickier, is that an AVA, which is just a fancy word for a viticultural region, or I'm sorry, county. We know, like Napa, Sonoma, we looked at San Joaquin. Those are all counties. In order to put that, just if you see a wine that just has Napa on there, or Sonoma, those wines have to have at least 75% of that wine juice, or the grapes of the wine have to be from that county. And then you get we're getting more and more specific. An AVA, which is a legally defined geographic region, we call those AVAs. And you've heard these: the Willamette Valley, Oakville, Rutherford, the Russian River Valley. These places that these little areas, say within Napa or within Sonoma, that you're visiting, those are you're getting much more specific. So in order to use those words as part of your label, your marketing, the percentage is starting to go up. So in Oregon, in order for a wine in Oregon to be able to put the AVA on their label, 95% of the grapes or the juice have to come from that AVA. So if you see Willamette Valley on the label, 95% of the juice is from there. In California, and then actually the rest of the country, it's 85%. So if you see a Napa wine that has Oakville on it, or a Sonoma wine that has Russian River Valley, you know that at least 85% of the juice is coming from there. Again, in both of these cases, it's usually 100%, but that's the law. And when you see a vineyard designation on a wine, these are wines that you're usually paying a good bit of money for, because the level of specificity is pretty extreme here. So if you see a wine, and sometimes it can just be the name of the wine and the vineyard, like Diamond Creek Vineyards, or the vineyard Tocolon, which is, those are two of the most famous vineyards in America. In order to put those on the label, 95% of the wine has to be from that vineyard. So again, you're talking about a very, very small allocation of grapes that could be made into those wines, which is why those wines tend to be much more expensive, because it's supply and demand. There's just not a lot of it to go around. So I know I covered a lot there, but I wanted to talk about that because that Pinot Grigio is labeled California. The Zinfandel is labeled California, which means that while the bulk of the grapes are coming from, in the case of Zinfandel, coming from Clarksburg, Amador County, they're able to pull Zinfandel from all over the Sierra foothills. And so it doesn't reach that threshold of being able to put an AVA on there or a county, but it's also, part and parcel of this wine. It's meant to be a value price wine. Same with the Pinot Grigio. We know that the bulk of those grapes are coming from the Central Valley, but they could be supplementing that with Pinot Grigio from the Central Coast. Some of it can be coming from a little bit farther north, but they have, it's just about, their ability to source great grapes and also deliver a value product, a value price product. So we're going to move on to the Pinot Noir unless anyone has any questions, but I felt like as I was pulling these wines together, I really wanted to discuss that because we don't often talk about those things. So I'm going to get my Pinot Noir. If anyone has a question, please let me know. Okay, so Rosé of Pinot Noir. This is a grape that is definitely growing in popularity. I'm seeing more and more of this, and you probably are too in the marketplace. So Pinot Noir, I think most of you know Pinot Noir. We've looked at it here on tastings. It has its historic home in Burgundy. As I mentioned with the Pinot Grigio, it is genetically unstable. It mutates on a dime. So if you've ever seen Pinot Blanc, Pinot Meunier, all of those are mutations of Pinot Noir, that original vinifera grape. The thing about Pinot Noir that is so unique is that it has, unlike really any other major wine producing red or purple skin grape, it has the ability to not only ripen, but it thrives in cool climates. So you see it in Burgundy, but you also see it in New Zealand in some of their really cool climates. You see it all over Germany. Spätburgunder is what it's called in Germany. You see it everywhere there. It's really their primary red grape. And Germany, in those regions, that's probably like really some of the coldest wine growing regions in the world. You see it all over Oregon. You see it in Sonoma, particularly around the Russian River, which is very, very cool. You see it down in Santa Barbara, which even though that's further south, it gets an enormous amount of cooling from the Pacific Ocean. So you see it, it's really indicative of these cool areas. And the other thing that's unique about Pinot Noir is that it's really the base of most of the world's great champagne and sparkling wine. It has very thin skins. The tannins are pretty low. That's why a lot of people like Pinot Noir, because it's a smooth wine. The tannins are almost imperceptible, has a lot of acidity, and the skins are almost like paper thin. So the wines tend to be very light in color and kind of pale. These are all things that are not only great for sparkling wine and champagne, but they're kind of the things that make them, it's so perfect for rosé. Actually, when they make rosé, just like when they make sparkling wine, they'll actually harvest these grapes a little bit earlier so they can keep that freshness and that acidity. And you can see in the picture here, those are bunches of Pinot Noir. And in addition to their ability to thrive in cool climates, they're also notoriously hard to grow. And so, anyone that's growing Pinot Noir has kind of an iron will, because they are incredibly susceptible to all sorts of mildew and vine diseases. And you can see here in this picture, you can see how to actually trellis these grapes. They clean out all the foliage so they get lots of air, lots of sunshine, because they need that ability to have whatever sunshine they can have to ripen. But they also need a lot of airflow to keep the grapes dry, because the bunches of grapes are pretty tight, and so they need to get a lot of airflow in there. But it's an enormous amount of work. But it's one of the great red grapes of the world. I mean, when people fuss about red wines, they're typically kind of clamoring over Bordeaux, which is either Cab and Merlot, or they're going nuts for red Burgundy, which is always 100% Pinot Noir. So it's a tough grape to grow, but it certainly delivers a really wonderful kind of wine experience. So I am, in full disclosure, I'm kind of new to rosé made with Pinot Noir. I've had a few. I've even actually had a white Pinot Noir, which is a white wine made from Pinot Noir juice, but has absolutely no contact with the skin. So it's a white wine. And it was pretty dry, a little funky to get my head around the idea of a Pinot Noir that didn't have any color. But, if I can make that leap, I can kind of make the leap to the fact that it can be made into a rosé. And again, it's perfect for champagne. So there's no reason why it also wouldn't be perfect for a rosé. And I know I received a few emails from folks tonight that had a little bit of trouble finding the Toad Hollow. So I also suggested another Sonoma wine producer, Angeline, that also makes a dry rosé of Pinot Noir. So I hope if you weren't able to find the Toad Hollow, you were able to grab one of those. And then I also, to a few people, suggested, even though it's from Oregon, and I know we're talking about California wines, one of my favorite Oregon producers is Acrobat, and they also do a dry rosé made from Pinot Noir, very much in this style. But I again wanted to focus on the California thing. So if we look at the label, I mean, you can see what I find really interesting about the label is that they actually put the word dry on there before the rosé. And I think that just comes from a lot of consumers, their default is that if they see a pink wine, they're thinking sweet wine. So I love the fact that Toad Hollow gets ahead of that and puts dry on the label. And unlike the Pinot Grigio that had the word California, and as you'll see on the Zinfandel that has California, this wine has Sonoma County. So we know that based on that chart, that at least 75% of the juice and the grapes that are in this bottle come from Sonoma County. Knowing Toad Hollow, it's 100%, but that it just shows you the level of specificity, and also, what a really great value a wine like this is, that it can come from a place like Sonoma County and still be, $13-14. So let's look at the wine in the glass. And we've done rosés on these tastings before. We've done Cremant. We've done a rosé from the Loire Valley. We've done rosé sparkling wines from California. So you kind of look at the glass here, you get that really beautiful, kind of light salmon color. And this is the color that you get from when you press Pinot Noir. If you have a grape like Tempranillo or Merlot or Sangiovese, these purple skin grapes, or Syrah or Grenache that have a thicker skin, this is using that classic direct press, which is they put all the grapes in a big press, and they just basically let the weight of the grapes crush themselves. And when the skins are thicker, well, there's more pigment to pick up as the juice makes its way down to the where it's running out for that first press. But Pinot Noir has very, very thin skin, so it has less pigment to give. And so you get this really beautiful light color. And for those of you who love and enjoy rosé, this to me, as soon as I see this, I think of rosés from Provence, which are, from a color standpoint, very light like this, but they're also considered the most elegant and delicate rosés in the world. And this color of this rosé reminds me of that kind of light color. So let's give it a swirl and take a sniff. I definitely what's interesting, I get a little bit of like a rose petal. I get like that cranberry, raspberry-ish thing going on. And maybe it's a little bit of the Pinot Grigio hangover, but I get like a little something a little blossomy there, but definitely a very floral nose. It's it's a delicious smell, I would say. So let's take a sip. Yeah. For me, the first thing I noticed is that it had more body than I thought. Did anyone else get that? I thought this was going to be really light in style, but it has a little more body. Anyone else surprised by that? To me, it's a really kind of very, has almost a watermelon. I get flavors of watermelon and strawberries, which are perfect, just coming in now that are so delicious. But if you have some strawberries, take a bite of strawberry and then take a sip of this. Maybe even a little bit of like red licorice. I don't know. It's and mine's a little bit warmer too. I let it warm up a little bit because I've been drinking it. So I'm getting a lot more of the fruitiness versus the acidity. And my mouth is watering, but it's not quite as acidic as I thought it would be, which is not bad. And it has a little bit more body to it. And I think this is, I have, it's 13%. So it's definitely got a little bit of alcohol. I guess it might be something similar to what we experienced with the Pinot Grigio, the extra percentage and a half of the alcohol gives it just a little more weight on the palate. But to me, this would be, great with a big old hunk of Camembert or something like that. Would be kind of delicious. I'd love this with a pizza or a hamburger. What do y'all think? For those of you who are love rosé or maybe are new to rosé of made with Pinot Noir, I'd love to get your feedback on this. Yeah, a little bit of that cherry flavor from the Angeline. Yeah, for sure. And I think Suzanne, I see your chat here. That would also be another one of those consistent, like that bright kind of cherry, almost cherry gumdrop. Not in terms of sweetness, but in terms of that flavor profile. I could definitely see that. That's a great one. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. So I have a question. So would you suggest a specific cheese for this one? Because I just tried it with Brie and it had like a very weird taste compared to trying it with something else, and now it tastes much better. So yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah, I think this could actually go in a number of directions. I mean, like one of those, a triple cream cheese or a softer cheese like Brie or Camembert. One of the things that as I was taking my first sip, I think about sometimes in the store I see those logs of like goat cheese that have cranberries stuffed in them. I would absolutely love some goat cheese with either craisins or just regular old dried cranberries or dried cherries. Not that we're too sour, but you want something that's got some richness, but a little bit of tanginess that can kind of link up with the acidity or that raciness in the wine. I would say I would avoid with something like this, like a really rich aged cheese. Those are probably a little too hefty for a wine like this. It's not only a more delicate grape like Pinot Noir, but then Pinot Noir made into a rosé style. So you even have less of that, some of that flavor and oomph, certainly the tannin from the skins, but I'd probably stay a little bit on the lighter side. and let's see. Cameron said, after you just said Camembert, we tried that, and she said it was delish. So, yeah, you could. What would really be interesting now that we're talking about it is, I'd love this with like some pepper jack, like a Monterey Jack with a little bit of jalapeno in there, because you'd get that kind of green fruitiness from the jalapeno, but the cheese is inherently very creamy as it melts, and I think that would also be something that or a cheese that'd be fun to have with rosé like this. Yeah, but great questions. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, Cameron, I knew what you were saying. That's one of the things that helps with me not having my glasses on, is all I saw, my mind immediately said delish instead of relish. So I got it. I was tracking with you the whole time.
You gotta have a Mac with the autocorrect, right? So
No, I got you. I'm with you. It was excellent. Yeah. Anybody else? I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. And like I said, there are a couple of other examples like the Angeline, the Acrobat, again, all great values. I mean, we're talking, rosés probably in that, $10, $12 range. And we're about to kick in. I mean, I know, and I have a lot of friends on this tasting, we drink rosé, it's always rosé time. But now that we're getting into the spring and into the summer, I think people will start to be thinking rosé will be more top of mind. And if you're looking for something that's a little different, the Pinot Noir could be a lot of fun. If you had, I'm thinking about if you had grilled fish tacos, something that you wanted that maybe had a creamy, sweeter style slaw for the kind of charred corn tortillas, which brings out the sweetness in the corn, but you have the kind of some kind of spicy little rub on the the fish, and then a little slaw on there. Something like this rosé of Pinot Noir would be excellent. Whereas some of the richer, more full-bodied rosés from Spain or from the Rhone might, they'd still work just fine, but in terms of like perfect pairing, those might be better suited for more like red meat or something a little heartier. This could be great with that kind of thing. Or Frito Misto, if you had calamari and peppers and all the those kind of things that had been fried up. This would also be great. I don't know if the Dunbars are taking more than one bottle of wine to the lake, but this would also be a great lake wine if you are so inclined, if you're looking to mix it up a little bit. But yeah, fun little wine.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Joey, that's why you're here.
A lot of questions. So one, we actually recently moved to Santa Barbara and have only been drinking Pinot Noirs. Like, that's it. So I was really fascinated whenever you were like, here's this rosé that is a Pinot Noir variety, because the Pinot Noirs are totally different in color. I mean, I feel like we had to go on like a hunting journey to find this type of variety. So how does a rosé, like, I guess, how is a rosé, what is a rosé first, I guess? I always thought that was similar to like a Chardonnay and it being, it's a type of grape. Like, this is how it's done, right? But if it has a Pinot Noir and I'm like familiar with that kind of totally different drink with a totally different, kind of experience. So I'm kind of curious about how rosés of the Pinot Noir variety are developed and how that relates to other rosés.
Yeah. So the quick helicopter ride over rosés is that just about every wine producing country in the world that grows a purple skin grape typically makes a rosé. Whether they do it, I'm not going to go there. So they take, they'll take the purple skin grape, there are different ways to make rosé. There is the direct press method that like this is made, where the weight of the grapes, they use a little pneumatic press, gently crushes the grapes. It lets it keeps the doesn't really mash up or bust up the skins or the seeds. So you just get the kind of the purity of the juice. You pick up some of the color that's really produces the most delicate style, like I said, that Provençal style of rosé. And then you have another method where they will do like what's called limited maceration, and it's basically like red wine light. So they crush the grapes, they keep the juice in contact with the skins instead of a week or two. It might be 24 or 48 hours. So you get just a little bit of pigment. You get some of that influence of the skins. Another way. Then there's another way, which is actually very popular in California. It's not the way that this wine is made. And it's also very popular in Spain and Italy. And that method is called the saignée method. And what they do is they take a big vat of grape juice that is destined to be made into red wine. And saignée just means bleed, and they bleed off a little bit of that juice. And what's left is the remaining solution that's in the tank has a higher concentration of skins to juice. So it ends up making this red wine that is just over the top with color and flavor and tannin. It makes these huge, robust red wines. And then the byproduct of that is the rosé that they produce. And again, it's made all over the world. So whether you're in Spain, Germany, France, Portugal, you name it, if they make a purple skin grape, somebody is making rosé out of it. And so it happens in France too, where they'll make rosé out of Pinot Noir. So if you've ever had a Crémant de Bourguignon, which is the sparkling wine made in the Champagne method from Burgundy, that's made with Pinot Noir. So it's not out of sync to make it with Pinot Noir. It's just in New World wine producing regions like Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, United States, rosés are typically made with other grapes. So it could be the super sweet blush wine like Zinfandel, which is made with the purple skin Zinfandel, or it could be Cab or Merlot. It's just that, in terms of New World examples of rosé, Pinot Noir as the primary grape is something that's a little bit new and just taking off, really. I mean, there are a few people that have been doing it for a while, but like as I was looking at wines for this particular tasting, I'm starting to see that that's becoming a thing, are Pinot Noir based rosés that are bone dry, that have no residual sugar. So they are fermenting out all of the sugar. So does that help?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That kind of blows my mind a little bit, but it's really helpful. Thank you.
Well, if y'all are interested, you can go to my YouTube channel, Jones is Thirsty,
Okay, cool.
and I post all of my virtual wine tastings on there. And last, may have been last May or June. In fact, it was another one of our Smile a Mile events. It's called Everything's Coming Up Rosés. And it's like a whole tasting on nothing but rosés. And we take a real deep dive into different styles, different grapes. But they're fun to drink, and they're not always super serious, but there's a lot of different styles, a lot of different grapes. And, Pinot Noir is just kind of having its day in the new world in terms of grapes that are being used for rosé.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. All right. Well, our last region, or the last grape that we're going to talk about is the good old Zinfandel. And we could go all night about Zinfandel, but in my opinion, I think that Zinfandel is probably one of the most misunderstood, and I think you could kind of put in parentheses there, maligned grapes out there. In terms of red wines, and I've talked about this before, we have what's called a tower of power, from the most full-bodied grape to the lightest in style. So if you think about light-styled red wines, you think of Pinot Noir or Italian Dolcetto. At the top, you think about Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon. Well, at the top of that chart is Zinfandel. It is by far the most full-bodied red wine that is, commercially produced, really. And it's also the one, and that's what really gets to the top. It has typically the most alcohol of any wine that you can buy on the market as a consumer. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But it can handle the heartiest of foods. So you think about the marbled steaks, anything that's smoked or grilled, like beef, lamb. It's especially good with spicy food. And in this case, I don't mean like peppery spice. I mean like Moroccan, Indian, Middle Eastern foods, because there's an undertone of spiciness that's always a part of Zinfandel. Some people think of it as like baking spice, like cinnamon, maybe nutmeg, but there's definitely a spiciness to Zinfandel, which makes it really wonderful with very aromatic foods. And I have to say, and I've been in a long time debate with many wine pros about this, but many consider Zinfandel like the classic pairing for barbecue. And they think of it as kind of the all-American wine pairing because Zinfandel is kind of thought of as a, classic all-American grape. And then you've got barbecue. And I don't necessarily disagree, but like when you think about Zinfandel and especially Texas style barbecue, like brisket, hot links, this is considered like, the ultimate pairing. I tend to like Syrah with my barbecue, but Zinfandel is phenomenal. And in fact, I think there are festivals around the country that link up Zinfandel and barbecue. And if you haven't tried it, I definitely encourage you to try that. In terms of almost indigenous grapes to America, I mean, Zinfandel's not indigenous. We'd have to travel to, the South and up the Eastern Coast really just to find truly indigenous grapes. But in terms of, fine wine grapes, Zinfandel is often thought of as the first real American grape. And it was brought here early on by Italian immigrants. And in Italy, Zinfandel is called Primitivo. And you'll see Italian wines labeled Primitivo. That's just Zinfandel. And I see Primitivo on wine menus in restaurants all over. I see it on, even in grocery stores and definitely in wine shops. But when you see Italian Primitivo, that is what we call American Zinfandel. And because Zinfandel has such a long history in California, and again, kind of ground zero for that is up in the Sierra Foothills in Amador County. Some of these vines can be 50, 60, 80, 100 years old. And that's why you often see old vine on the as an amplifier to Zinfandel. They're really old. They really are old vines. It's a complete anomaly. It's totally different than what you'd find in a regular vine that may age out after 20 or 25 years. These vines, they're not putting out a ton of fruit, but they're still putting out really high quality fruit, even when they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and up into 100. And the thing that I want you to notice about Zinfandel, and you can see in this picture here, rather than like the classic cordon or spur pruning that you see with the trellising with the expensive wires, very beautiful that you see in vineyards all over the world. Early on, Zinfandel was trained, and this is called head trained pruning. And this was done out of necessity because early on they just didn't have the capital to put expensive wiring to make these trellises, and it also allows them to as the fruit gets older, it allows them to control the harvesting, the pruning of the foliage, the leaves around it, and it's just a little bit easier with Zinfandel. And one of the things that Zinfandel is notorious for, and you can see it in this picture as well, is it ripens. It doesn't ripen evenly. It ripens unevenly, which means they have to leave the grapes on for a long time. And you can even see in this picture, you see some green grapes next to some purple grapes. That bunch in the foreground, to my camera right, you see a bunch of grapes that are dark purple. So those are actually ripened. The one in the middle, that bunch, they're still green. And when a purple skin grape is immature, it's still green. It goes through a process called veraison, and that's when the green grape starts to mature phenolically. And so the sugar develops, the grapes soften, the skin turns purple, the seeds begin to mature. But you can see here in that vine, you just couldn't pick that because you've got too much unripe fruit there. So as the grapes stay on there, what happens is more sugar develops. And that's why you get these Zinfandels that are 15% alcohol. And legally in America, the maximum amount of alcohol you can put on a label for a bottle of wine and still call it table wine is 15%. But within that 15%, you have a 1.5 variance, high or low, that you can still achieve and still keep 15% on there. So some of these Zinfandels could be 16.5% easily, and they can still put 15% on there. So these are big wines. I mean, and the good thing is that because Zinfandel is such a rich wine, and it's, you hear about these flavors, like these jammy flavors, you don't often get that high alcohol, but it's one of the things that adds a lot of body to these wines. So, we'll look at that when we look at the Zinfandel. And the other thing is, everyone asks about the whole, the thing around white Zinfandel. I swear, when I first started talking to people about wine and teaching people about wine, the vast majority of the people had no idea that Zinfandel was actually a purple skinned grape that was made into a red wine. They thought that was the outlier. They thought that white Zinfandel was just what you got. And there's no denying that white Zinfandel is an absolute juggernaut in the world of American wine consumption. But it's sweet, and it's not a white wine at all. It's actually a blush wine, and it's made from Zinfandel. But it's what I call the billion-dollar accident. And I'll just I've told the story many times, but I'll since we're talking about Zinfandel. So Bob Trinchero, who he and his brother were just starting out in the 70s making wine. And today, Trinchero Wines is one of the most respected wine companies, wine families in America. They make amazing wines. They really do. They're phenomenal. And if you have a chance to have one of their wines, I would highly recommend anything they make. One of the brands that they own under Trinchero, which is what launched Bob and his brother, was they bought this old broken down estate called Sutter Home. And there actually was a place called Sutter Home, but that's where the Trinchero brothers bought this little estate, this little property, and it was like paycheck to paycheck. And they were growing Zinfandel up in Amador County, and they were making a batch of Zinfandel, and the fermentation got stuck. And that's a chemical thing that can happen where literally the yeast stopped consuming the sugar and fermentation just shuts down. The brothers did not have the ability to throw out that batch of Zinfandel, so they drained it all off and they sold it to their buddies, because they had to, they couldn't make more wine until they made a little bit more money on that batch they just made. lo and behold, it kind of took off locally around that part of the Sierra foothills. Word got into Napa, and they started drinking this sweet wine around just like among winemakers, and it's kind of a hip thing to do there in wine country. And Bob and his brother kind of figured that they were onto something, and so the Tricaro brothers actually launched Sutter Home as an homage to that happy accident. And we all know Sutter Home today. I mean, it literally is a $1 billion franchise, and it's what allows the Tricaro family today to make these amazing, world-class, high-quality wines. So it really was the result of this accident. But of course, now it's unfortunately clouded a lot of the people's perception of what a blush wine should be, a rosé, because everywhere else outside of America, a pink wine is a dry wine, like that rosé of Pinot Noir we just had. And it also drove a lot of people to think of Zinfandel as not a serious grape. I don't want that because I've had white Zinfandel. I don't want Zinfandel. And they couldn't be more opposite. So that's kind of a brief history of Zinfandel. So let's grab the bottle. Again, not a ton to talk about here, just that you'll notice, again, it has these, they're so proud of these old vine, head-trained Zinfandel vines. And honestly, this is also something that's big in Europe, are these head-trained vines. You see it a lot in the Rhone, particularly in the southern Rhone. They grow a lot of Syrah and Grenache on these head-trained vines, and they're just really kind of jarring when you see them, because it's just not that beautiful, pristine, very, geometrically speaking, very beautiful, winding. It just kind of looked kind of gnarly, which is where that word comes from. But again, like the Pinot Grigio, you see California here. So while most of this fruit comes from areas like Amador County and Clarksburg, some of this Zinfandel can be sourced from outside of those areas. So let's look at what's in the glass. You can get Zinfandel sometimes, because it gives off so much color and is such a rich wine, that they can be sometimes can be very, very dark. This one actually happens to be have a little bit of translucence to it. So while Zinfandel is known for its a kind of over the top ripeness, it also has thin skins, not quite as thin as Pinot Noir, but relative to their brother and sister grapes like Cab and Syrah that have very thick skins, or Malbec, which has very thick skins. For these big full-bodied grapes, this grape has relatively thin skin, so you can get you don't get so much extraction. It can be a little interesting to think of a big red wine and still see a little bit of that light through there. You can see around the edges, you see that kind of it looks almost like I think of it as like a watermelon rind. It's you see a little bit of red, but then you see like this little kind of white, creamy looking ridge around there. And that really is lets you know that this is a young wine. So when you see that kind of that light ring around the outside, that red, you'll know that this is kind of a young wine, and which is true. Mine's a 2019, so it's youthful. So let's give it a sniff, see what we think.
I have to say, it's burning my eyes.
Is it burning your eyes? Burning my eyes too. This wine has got to be. I'd bet my paycheck that it's more than 15%. Beyond the alcohol in the nose, because as you swirl it, alcohol is volatile, right? It evaporates quickly, and as it evaporates, it carries those aromas that you smell. So think about putting perfume or cologne on your arm. The base of that is alcohol, right? Alcohol hits your skin, it immediately evaporates. What's left is the perfume, the scent. The same thing happens in wine. As you swirl it and the wine goes and attaches itself to the glass, the aromas stay, the alcohol evaporates. When you get your nose in it, too much of that alcohol can kind of make your eyes water a little bit. But I was immediately struck by the influence of the barrel. This wine gets about a year in new American oak. But for me, I smell, it smells like caramel and butterscotch. I mean, I definitely get some oak influence here, which is kind of delicious, but it's definitely different than the last two wines, right? You know, I also get, you know, I can pick up on some of that jamminess, that fruit. A lot of, it's like a, you know, red, blue, dark fruit basket for sure. So let's have a sip. Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely, I can feel, I feel like I just did a shot of bourbon. Yeah, this is a wine that's definitely better with food. I have friends that can guzzle this stuff down. They love it. It's a great wine. I just would like to have some food with it, and I should have had something to nibble. It's I can see where that jammy comes from, and I'd love to get your feedback from some of you who are kind of putting those things into words, because I definitely get like dried fruit, dried plums, dried cranberries, like again, dried figs. It's fruit. It's not fresh, like bright. It's more dense, and that comes from that ripeness, the almost like baked fruit. But yet very jammy in terms of it, you know, having, you know, just think about you just ate a spoonful of jam. You definitely can kind of get that. Anyone else tracking with some of those?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite bottles of wine. I've purchased it a couple of times now.
Yeah.
Get it at my grocery store.
Yeah.
I do like the jammy flavor, and I'm lucky enough to live near a couple of wineries that make Zinfandels like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. That's right. I remember you being from the West Coast, so you definitely have kind of a main line to some of these probably smaller producers that are doing some really cool stuff with Zinfandel. Yeah, I'm looking here at some of the comments. Coffee, cocoa. Let's see. I guess the Dunbars are having a cheese that's rubbed with coffee, and I could definitely see that linking up with some of these flavors for sure. Chorizo would be good. Yeah, fantastic. A cheddar porter. Yeah, that sounds great. You need something rich, something that can stand up to this. But it's a, you know, and again, I get even on the when I guess let me have one more sip. I'm struck by how smooth this wine is. I think that's why a lot of people also like Zinfandel. It's big, bold, a lot of ripeness, but again, relative to some of its more tannic cousins like Syrah, Grenache, and Cab and Malbec, even Merlot, this tends to be a smoother, to me at least. My tongue isn't drying up. I mean, I get some of the tannin, but it's not like, you know, I've licked a towel. It's not that kind of dryness, that total astringency. So that's really wonderful. And then I still keep going back. I guess I'm locked into that, some of the barrel influence, the oak barrel of that caramel vanilla-y, butterscotch kind of thing that's mixed in there with the fruit. It's kind of, it's a little bit like a dessert in a glass to me, without the residual sugar. It's it's kind of a very delicious kind of experience. Anybody picking up on the spiciness? You know, we talked about that earlier, about Zinfandel as a grape having an inherent spice to it. A lot of people talk about baking spices, even like a licorice kind of essence to it. Anybody getting any of that?
I feel like I'm gnawing on a pepper grinder.
Yeah.
But I love it. Like
Yeah.
would put pepper on everything and
In a good way, right?
Good way. I see. Gotcha.
With food, like it's definitely like, whoa, wait a minute, you know.
Yeah, no, but I am liking it. It does taste velvety to me, but
yes,
you can feel the alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah, it's awesome. I don't drink red wine a lot, but I think that I would pick this up, and I don't think I've had a Zinfandel before tonight, because white Zinfandel has always scarred.
Yes. See, that's the problem. That's the problem. I'm telling you right now, if and I've seen this happen with some of my own friends. Again, this is my personal preference. I'm not the kind of person that would sit around and drink a half bottle of Zinfandel without food, because man, that alcohol can get on you quickly, especially if you have it in the daytime. But this is a wine that's awesome with food, and you could see maybe like you mentioned the pepperiness. That I think that's why a lot of sommeliers and wine professionals think of Zinfandel as a barbecue wine. If you think about like brisket that's been coated with pepper or salt, or Texas style hot links, which are just really robust and juicy. But even something like pork shoulder that's got that real that bark, and you get a mix of the inside and outside meat with a richer kind of thicker barbecue sauce. You could see how something like Zinfandel would come right alongside that. But I've seen lots of wine pairing menus where this is served with grilled lamb chops, with a roasted or grilled or smoked leg of lamb. I mean, something that's big and robust that can stand up to that alcohol. And I think that's what gives people that kind of trips people up sometimes, is it's very smooth, but it packs a big punch for sure. But actually mine, I opened mine about 45 minutes before the tasting, just so it could open up. But it's pretty delicious. I need a big hunk of cheese, but it's a delicious wine.
Good with charcuterie, right? We've got a copa that's got some pepper to it and a lot of marble and that fat with that.
So you
alcohol.
got some fat. Exactly.
It's really good.
Yeah, great call. And that would be another one. I mean, you just need something that can kind of, most of the time you're trying to, cleanse your palate from the richness. This is one of those times where it's like the opposite. You got to like get something that's full bodied, that's got some fat and some marbling to counterbalance the wine this time. But yeah, that's a great suggestion. That copa would be, a really terrific with that peppery, bright pepperiness. Yeah, good call. Yeah. Any other comments about this one?
Hey, Jones, just a question. Are you going to always have these oaky, peppery notes in every Zinfandel, or is that more just characteristic of this particular one? Is the Zinfandel always going to be an oak barrel and always pick up an oaky note?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that two ways. The pepperiness could very well be unique to this particular style. That's, as I touch on every time, it's totally subjective. Someone may be getting cracked black pepper, others may not. So it could be, that particular bottle, that producer. but I've never seen a Zinfandel that does not have oak aging. It needs some barrel aging. It's a big old wine, so it needs, even if it's a young wine, it needs some maturation in an oak barrel to kind of round off some of those rougher edges. It definitely gets malolactic fermentation. You can feel that in the creaminess of this wine to soften some of the acidity of this wine. But it definitely, you're always going to find it might not have the same level of oak as this wine. Maybe some of the more expensive versions may have barrels that are maybe a vintage or two old, so they're a little bit more, less assertive. But it's always going to get some oak aging. May not be quite as have the tropical or caramel types of flavors, but it's definitely going to have some oakiness, oak influence and oak age. And to your point, actually about the aging, Zinfandel is one of those grapes that you now see being aged in, bourbon barrels and Scotch barrels and rum barrels. I mean, you can see how this wine absolutely, finds they're thick as thieves with those spirits barrels that already have that little extra bit of spirit that's soaked into the wood, but then gives off that additional influence of the wine. But it's one of those wines that's big enough, the grapes that's big enough to be able to handle that kind of next level oak aging. Yeah, great question. Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. Yeah. Would love to get some feedback on what everyone thinks about this trio of wines tonight. Was anything like an absolute dog? Was anything a revelation? Was anything, kind of, hey, that was kind of cool, I might consider it? I was definitely that way about that Dark Horse Pinot Grigio. The other two, I had a little bit more experience with, but would love to see what y'all think.
So the Pinot Grigio is also sold at my local grocery stores, so I'm definitely going to buy it again.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Jones.
Fire away.
Can you recommend another Zinfandel? We're discovering that we absolutely love Zinfandels, and we love the price tag on this one. So,
yeah.
What do you got?
Well, I mean, you can run the gamut on that. Four Vines is another one of those wineries that basically deals exclusively in Zinfandel. Fantastic. Seven Deadly Zins is another really nice brand. Sigazio is another family that kind of deals exclusively in Zinfandel. That's kind of your next level in terms of price point. But Four Vines, the wine we're having tonight is always again, this family makes great wines at a Tuesday night price. They do a great job. If you look at those best of lists that are kind of one tier up, Four Vines has been one of the most popular and the most probably awarded brands around. It's probably, it's still under $20. It may be more like 15 instead of 12, but Four Vines is another one that I think they do a tremendous job and real consistent across the board and super easy to find.
Thank you.
Well, we really enjoyed the evening, so thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you all for joining.
We learned a lot.
Yeah, awesome.
And I've found that I've enjoyed a lot of Zinfandels from Lodi area.
Yeah, Lodi for sure. Yeah, Lodi is another one of those places that if you visit Lodi, it's not, or at least historically, has not really been on everybody's romantic wine country getaway. I've been to Lodi a few times. They make a lot of bulk wine there, and it's a lot of wineries have their business office there. Also some pretty fantastic golf courses, but it's not, it doesn't look like a traditional wine growing region, but Lodi makes some absolutely terrific wines. If you think of, there's a family, the Wente family, Wente. You've probably seen Wente, in your wine shop, in your grocery store. But Wente makes a lot of fantastic wines from Lodi. So don't sleep on Lodi. It's just not, it just doesn't always capture that beautiful kind of wine country vista, but it's a great wine producing area for sure. Yeah.
I don't have a specific to these wines question, but wine in general. When we were searching for rosé, we saw an organic rosé that I was really tempted to pick up. Yeah. And then I bookmarked a question for you, which if you could walk me through your feelings about organic wine and, you know, the pros, the cons, what you're missing, what you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. This comes up in just about every event. I don't really see a whole lot of downsides to organic viticulture. The dirty little secret is that most of the vineyards throughout Europe are organic and have been organic. They do, they're not necessarily certified organic, but it's very, very, if any, pesticides. There's a lot of dry farming there. There are all of the things that you would normally do around sustainability and organic farming. But they, for the longest time, the Europeans and the Italians and French in particular, have always been hesitant to put organic on their labels because they didn't want anyone to perceive that as some kind of marketing thing. They wanted their wines to be appreciated and enjoyed based on what was in the bottle. And so folks don't always realize that. If you want wines that are really made in a very conscientious, sustainable way, most wines in Europe are done that way. In terms of wines from the New World, California seems to be the leader in actually leveraging organic as a label term, but I don't see any pros or cons to it. I mean, if it's a good wine, it's a good wine. The fact that they're doing something in an organic and a sustainable way is fine. I mean, there's also the kind of the to the max version of that, which is biodynamic, which is kind of like organic on steroids. And there, California is one of the market leaders in biodynamic farming, but you have it all over Europe, all over South America, in Chile and Argentina. A lot of winemakers really have been deep into biodynamic farming for years now. And that's even the requirements for that. If it takes, say, 4 to 5 years to have your vineyard certified organic, you have to snap another 4 or 5 years on top of that to get certified as biodynamic. And that's great. At the end of the day, you want to have yes, you want to purchase a wine that you feel is being done in a kind of a wholesome way that's good for you and good for the environment. But you also want to have a wine that you enjoy drinking. So I'd hate for you to buy an organic wine and kind of choke it down, but know that you're doing the right thing when and just because you bought it because it says organic, when you may be able to buy other wines that are organically produced that just don't have that on the label and may be, absolutely delicious. But having said that, the world of organic wine has really come a long way. There's this whole idea of these naturally produced wines, which are, unique wine in terms of production, relative to more wines that come from larger producers where they're using, they inoculate it with yeast that are are not natural. There are lots of things going on in that natural and organic movement that are making strides today. So all I would say is there's no real downside to it as long as you enjoy drinking it. That's great.
Yeah, that is really enlightening. I'm very confused now, but in regards to because a lot of the natural wines will look different, they're cloudier, they won't have a lot of them won't have corks.
There's a reason for that. That's because they use naturally occurring yeast, and they don't use sulfites. And again, this is a whole nother conversation.
I know.
But the high level of that is that there's a reason why you use yeast that are stable, because you want to be sure that once fermentation's done, that they don't kick into fermentation again. And so you want to, they're just good winemaking practices. So the converse of that are these natural wines. And again, some can be very delicious, but they vary from bottle to bottle, because once you put the cap on, stuff's still going on in the bottle many times. I mean, they're just a unique offering. So I always caution people that if you've only had natural wines and you don't like wine, don't let that be your only experience with wine. Try more commercially produced. Again, they can be biodynamic, they can be sustainable, they can be incredibly conscientious in terms of way that they're being produced and grown. They're just done on a larger scale in a more controlled environment. Give those a shot, and don't let the natural wines be your only exposure to wines, because it's like saying the only beers you've ever had are high gravity, small batch craft beers that are cloudy, that have, the lees in the bottle that are, can be kind of funky, just make sure you've covered all your bases. But it's the beauty of it. There's something for everyone these days.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That was a very generous walkthrough of the pros and cons of natural and organic wine.
Yeah, no sweat. My pleasure.
Jones, you said dry farming. Does that mean no irrigation?
Yeah, sorry about that. One of those phrases that I swear under the Jones is Thirsty, no snobbery wine education that I would omit, which is a wine phrase. But dry farming, yeah, thank you. Just means that there's no outside irrigation. The only irrigation comes from rainfall, and much of the world is dry farmed. That's not always possible in every region, but most of France, most of Spain, most of Italy, most of California, and especially in the really, the wines that the vineyards that are producing some of the great fruit are all dry farmed. They're not using outside irrigation. Now, what the little asterisk to that is that some of these dry farmed vineyards get the advantage of having runoff from, because many of them are in the foothills of snow-capped mountains. So if you're in Mendoza and you're at high elevation, you're in the foothills of the Andes, there's a lot of water that runs off from the Andes. So you're able to kind of capture that. You're not doing additional irrigation like you would if you were growing, carrots or corn, and you just see, water being pumped on those crops nonstop. But yeah, Jay, thank you. That's what dry farming means. And again, that's one of those things that are kind of a hallmark of more sustainable agriculture, is growing crops that can be grown without the addition of water. And the truth is that you want to starve grapes of water as much as you can, because if you've ever grown tomatoes, too much water dilutes the flavor of the tomato. Grapes are the same way. You want to stress the vines. You want to limit the nutrients. In fact, you want to grow them in the most nutrient avoid soil that you can. You want them to have to work hard to get a single drop of water, because what it produces, it's like survival of the fittest in terms of the grapes. The grapes that stay are the grapes that have the most energy, the most vigor, the most flavor, the most sugar. and that's what you want. Too much water, too much fertilizer, the grapes get flabby and fat, and they're just they're not they're like table grapes. Anyway, thanks for asking that question. Yeah, dry farming is a good thing. Yeah. All right. Well, we've gone to past 8:15. I appreciate y'all sticking around. This has been great. And again, I want to do something a little different tonight with the kind of education in quotes format, and talk a little bit about the grapes, where they're from, do a little bit of deeper dive on the essence of these grapes as it relates to these wines. But I appreciate all the great feedback. Again, if you've never supported Smile a Mile before, please think about doing that tonight. You can Venmo those virtual tips to Jones is Thirsty, and help support those folks for doing some really amazing stuff in the community. I will also put up one more slide for those of you who are kind of new to Jones is Thirsty, which is if you want to sign up for my newsletter and get a steady stream of wine recommendations, just like the wines we had tonight, almost always under $15, generally in that $8 to $12 range. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can email at info@jonesisthirsty, and I can sign you up for that. Also, you'll keep up to speed on upcoming wine events. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. It's always Jones is Thirsty, where I'm almost daily posting wine recommendations or some little tidbit about wine if you want to stay up to speed. Thanks for all the great feedback on the chat tonight. I get as much out of this as hopefully you all do. So it's definitely a mutually beneficial evening. And again, thank you all very much. I hope to, I'll hopefully be announcing the next virtual wine event, which I think will be in 2 weeks. It may have to be 3, but it'll be right around the corner. And it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. We're going to look at the wines of Australia. They've got some awesome stuff going on there, some great reds, great whites, and some really unique wines that are, again, priced right and great with food. So I think that'll be the next one up. So enjoy the rest of your Saturday night, everyone. Thank you so much, as always, for joining. Always great to see other wine enthusiasts. I see lots of glasses there being held up and cheers for everyone. Stay happy, healthy. Hopefully, wherever you live, the weather is getting a little bit warmer, sun's coming out, and don't forget that the time changes tonight. That's the big one. Yeah, so we're going to spring forward tomorrow. So until we see each other again, cheers, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Woo,
We had a great time.
Good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great whites from Australia are scary.
Yes. Come on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the setup, Scott.